So hello and welcome to Talking Asperger's with Andrew. This is session 41. So that's 41 weeks we've been doing these sessions. Just got someone else to join us. So we'll just pause there for a moment while we admit Nina in. Hello, Nina, are you there? Hello. Are you there, Nina? Hello, Nina. Can you hear me? I'm not sure that Nina can hear me actually, although I don't. It doesn't say that she's muted. But just for Nina's benefit, because she's arrived just after I've announced it, I do like to record my sessions so I can put them on my YouTube channel so that anyone can view them afterwards if they haven't seen it on the live show. So my name is Andrew Marsh. I was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome 7 years ago, having had a previous career as a geologist in the construction industry. And what I like to do with my sessions is to talk about a particular aspect of Asperger syndrome, either something that affects people personally or in the work environment, and then maybe open the floor up to anyone who may have some comments or questions that they want to make. So I have a 7 steps program that I work with employers on 7 steps to how to better manage people with Asperger syndrome. And I want to cover one of the key topics of that in today's session. And it's really from my own experience that I've developed this, but this particular one, today's topic, is the safe space. And the safe space is kind of what it says on the tin, really, but it's in the work environment. People who have Asperger syndrome or autism or other neurodivergent traits, we can get overwhelmed more easily than neurotypical colleagues, and we can find it sometimes difficult through various factors at work, such as noise or bright lights or constant interruptions, which are changing your focus from what you're doing. And there can come a point when the best thing for that person to do is to leave that particular space where they are and just go somewhere safe, just to sit down, get a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and get away from the office hullaballoo, the triggers that might set them into a meltdown, or to be really have an episode which is unpleasant for them and potentially those around them. And I call that the safe space. A lot of larger companies tend to have breakout areas, and these can be very good as safe spaces, providing that they're not particularly bright and they don't have loud music or big television screens on that are quite loud and quite bright with lights, because that can actually be counterproductive. But a safe space is somewhere where the person can go and sit down, and say, with a cup of tea or coffee, and just get away from that environment that they were in, just for 5 or 10 minutes, calm down, take some deep breaths, maybe do some little breathing exercises, or just be able to shut their eyes and just let things drift away from them so that they can feel more calm and more gather themselves so that they can go back to work. And I think it works really well. It doesn't have to be somewhere formal like a breakout room. If you have a canteen, great, that when it's not being used, it's quiet, or you've got a meeting room that's not being used, or even you may have an archive area where there might be one person sitting there at work and they're sitting there quietly, and it wouldn't disturb you if you were in there sitting with them. You can find a way. Most businesses can find a space that is quiet for someone to be able to regather themselves, calm down, take a few deep breaths, and then so that they can come back to work and they can focus and be ready and able to work in a more productive way. And this is I've just got someone else joining us, so I'll just say hello to Roberto. Yes. Hello, Roberto. Are you there? Hello, Roberto.
Yes, hello.
Hello, hi there. Welcome to today's session. we have just started, so I'll just briefly recap for you. I like to record my sessions so that I can put them on my YouTube channel. So I hope everyone's okay with that. And today I'm talking about the safe space.
Yes.
Where someone who has Asperger syndrome or another neurodivergent traits can sometimes get overwhelmed at work through noise or interruptions or bright lights, or they can just get overwhelmed with too much work or too many instructions that they need to find somewhere to calm down and be quiet. And so that's what I'm talking about as the safe space that's away from their immediate working area there where they work, and they can find somewhere quiet, still within the building. Although it might be that the safe space for them is actually just so that they can go and have a walk around the block for 10 minutes. There's some health and safety issues that need to be considered amongst that, and I want to cover those now. The first one is because the person, I'll call them on the spectrum, the person on the spectrum has got to the state where they need to get away. The last thing that that you want them to do is to actually go and ask someone for permission. Because it might well be that your supervisor or your boss has just given you something, or just had a discussion with you, or given you another pile of work to do, and it could be that person and that interaction that has made you want to think, I just need to get away for a little while. So it's really important that the person who needs to get away to the safe space doesn't have to ask permission. And what I'm going to suggest that they do is they leave some kind of signal on their desk. It could be just something simple, like they put their hole punch in the middle of the desk, or their stapler, um, or they turn off their angle poised lamp if they've got an angle poised lamp. Just something so that when the boss comes out from their office or is walking around, they see the sign, they say, oh, that's okay, Andrew's gone to his safe space. In the event of an emergency evacuation, a fire or a fire drill, I know where Andrew is going to be. I know where that person is going to be, so that I can account for them and they are going to be safe where they are, rather than they've left, no one knows where they've gone. You've then got the worriers. Are they okay? Are they safe? Are they going to be able to come back? So that would be my suggestion, is to have a signal that you've arranged with your line manager beforehand when you're talking about reasonable adjustments and things that can help you work better in your workplace. To say that if I need to go to my safe space, I'm going to put my hole punch in the middle of my desk, or I'm going to turn over the report that I'm working on so that it's face down. Something like that. A very simple thing, so that someone can, looking at it at an instant, they can go, oh, there's the signal. They've gone to the safe space, and you know that they'll be back in 5, 10, 15 minutes time. And this not having to ask permission is really important, because that person with Asperger's, they might be really anxious. They might be getting to the point of having a meltdown, where if one other person comes up and says something to them, or they get another email about this topic, they're going to have a meltdown. They're going to blow their top. They're going to be vocal. It's going to be unpleasant for them. It's going to be unpleasant for their colleagues. They're going to cause a scene. And that's the last thing you want. You want the person to feel safe and comfortable at their work. And so that's my suggestion, is that you have a signal that you agreed beforehand. You don't have to ask permission. And the other thing that drops out of that is, yeah, you're going to make up the time. You're going to need to make up the time. And so there needs to be a position of trust between you, the employee, and your employer, your supervisor. But it's no different. It is no different to a smoker having to go outside the building to have a cigarette 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, than the arrangements you have with them to make up their time. It's no different whatsoever. So we accommodate people who smoke, who need to smoke during the day. So there's no different to accommodate someone on the spectrum that says, I need to go away for 5, 10 minutes just to calm down, and I'll come back, and I'll be productive. And you don't have to worry. And the boss doesn't need to interrogate them when they come back. Are you okay? Is everything all right? What was it about? What triggered it? That's not the time for that discussion. That discussion needs to be something that you have as a regular check-in with your boss, with your supervisor, that says, there was a couple of times this week when it got a bit heightened alert for me, and it happened because of this, this, and this. And then you have that discussion with them separately. But then that moment that you need to get away, or that moment that you've come back and you're able to go to work, don't interrogate that person, because they've just calmed down from feeling like they need to get away. Deal with that at a separate time. Maybe have a check-in point. Say your 3 o'clock tea or coffee on a Friday afternoon might be a good check-in point to say, how have we done this week? Are there things that we can do that can help you? How have the reasonable adjustments worked for you? I noticed you went away a couple of times this week. Was there a common trigger? Was there something that we need to talk about so that we don't have these situations? We don't have them at all, or they become less frequent. So you need to have that sensible discussion, but not at that moment that you've just come back from going to the safe space. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to ask anyone who's on the call whether you have any comments about safe space, and any observations that you may have about using a safe space efficiently and effectively at work, or other things that you do to try and get away from the intensity of emotion and potentially anxiety, and that could lead you to have a meltdown or to get to a trigger point. So if anyone has any comments or any questions about that, then please feel free to ask away. I know we have 5 new people on the call today, so if any of those wants to make some comment or observation, then please feel free to do so. It's a very open, I like to run a very open, very relaxed session. So if anyone has any comments, then please feel free to ask. Can't believe everyone's got and understood that and has no comment, but that's okay. So I used to work as a geologist in the construction industry before I knew I had Asperger syndrome. And at times it got very stressful, and I didn't know. Yes, Laura's just mentioned in the chat there, just going to the bathroom for a while was a useful safety tactic. Absolutely, that was one of the things that I did. Was just going away, not even tell anyone. You just disappear to the bathroom for a length of time. I was going to mention that I got stressed out quite a lot, particularly at one company I worked in, and I would find myself. It was quite a tall building, so we had 5 or 6 floors that we had offices on, and I would find myself in a different part of the building in a corridor, and I would suddenly realize that I'm not where I should be. I'm not at my desk. I'm not in my immediate working place. And I had no idea that I had actually got to this place that was just on the corridor on the 4th floor or the 5th floor. And it used to surprise me. It used to take me back, and I think, why am I here? Why have I found myself in this place? And is this where I want to be? Is this where I need to be? And my answer to those 2 questions were usually, I don't know why I found myself there. And no, it wasn't where I was supposed to be. And I would either turn around and go back to where I was going to work, or if I was, one of the other areas that I would sometimes go to would be the main stationery and archive area. We had a small stationery cupboard in our department, but there was a bigger one for the main firm because we had 4 or 5 or 6 different divisions within the company I worked in. And so there was a main stationery office, an archive area. And there was a very nice, a nice chap who ran this area, very relaxed, very down to earth. And you could go and have a chat with him for 5 or 10 minutes about nothing in particular. But it was a great way of unwinding, getting away from that stressful point that you were in at work, and finding that just having a conversation with someone about nothing at all. It might have been something to do with sport, or it might have been anything at all. But just having an interaction with someone who's not your boss, who's not your superior, who's not going to report you for being there to someone. It's just a chap that you can have a conversation with. And it was a great way of unwinding and detoxing from that situation, that potentially explosive situation in work. Then I would then because I was in the stationery cupboard, I would collect some stationery just to make it look like, oh, Andrew's, when I come back to the office, oh, where were you gone? Oh, I just went to the stationery cupboard. It's a very easy way of getting out of having a conversation about something if you've been away for 5 or 10 minutes. When in those days there wasn't the safe space to go to. And so you find little ways, your own little coping mechanisms, your own little strategies. And as I said, Laura said, going to the bathroom was one of them. On the odd occasion, I would just occasionally say to the guy that I was sitting next to, I'm just going outside for 5 or 10 minutes, just in the event of a health and safety issue, a fire alarm or fire drill. And I would just go outside, walk around the block. And just to try and calm down, because I was getting to that point that if someone came up and said something to me, or the phone went, I would not necessarily be sure that I could be calm, cool, and collected about what it was that that person wanted me to do or wanted to ask me. But having these little release mechanisms, these little ways of calming down, having a safe space, is really important. And in the UK, we have, hang on just a moment. In the UK, we have a law called the Equality Act, which came out in 2010. And as part of that Equality Act, there was something called reasonable adjustments. And these are things that for anyone can ask for reasonable adjustments. And those are things like, for me, the two big ones for me were noise and light. So they could trigger my Asperger's into a meltdown situation. So I would like to be in a quiet room. I don't want to be near doors that are going to be banging and clanging. I don't want to be near people who type loudly, particularly older people of my generation or older, because they would have typed on typewriters, and so they would have had to bang the keyboards harder than we do with a computer keyboard. And it's very difficult for them to detrain themselves to be soft to touch on a typewriter. And that clicking, that clacking of a keyboard can be a trigger for someone with Asperger's syndrome or ADD or OCD or other neurodivergent issues and traits. And so reasonable adjustments would be, okay, well, let's find somewhere that is suitable for you, that's out of the bright lights, so we won't put you next to a window. Good one. And we haven't got, maybe if we turned off the overhead lights, the strip lights, and gave you an angle poised light instead of a strip light, would that work for you? That would be great for me, because an angle poised light works much better than having the really bright fluorescent lights, which can buzz, and that buzzing can be a trigger as well. And so these little things are the things that make your working environment comfortable for you. And so these reasonable adjustments are things that an employer is obliged to do for you under the law. And so the safe space is one of those. It doesn't actually say, I don't think it says in the Equality Act of 2010, you must provide a safe space. But if someone came up to you and said at an interview, I have Asperger's, and every now and then when I get overwhelmed, I would like to be able to go and find somewhere quiet to sit down, a safe space. Could you accommodate that? And they should be able to accommodate that for you. It might make them think about it. They might have to think, oh, I'm not sure how we could do that. But after they've given it some thought, they might say, well, there's a meeting room that's rarely used on the second floor or on the third floor. That could be an opportunity for you. And so it would give them the opportunity to think about something, about how they cope with and manage you as an employee, with some considerations that need to be taken into account in making your working environment as suitable for you as it can be, because that's the aim of the business. They want everyone who's working for them to be at their maximum efficiency or near maximum efficiency, with as minimal distractions and things that can make them be less efficient. You want people to be efficient. You want them to be able to work collectively and in teams and also individually, so that they produce good work and they meet deadlines and so on. So if there are things that an employer can do that can make your life better as an employee with Asperger syndrome or autism, then it's in the business's benefit to do that, so that you can be calm, relaxed, efficient, productive in your working environment. So those are little subtle things that can be done. But it's important I can only speak from a UK point of view, that employers understand that they need to make reasonable adjustments. And I do most Monday mornings, I do a poll on LinkedIn where I ask a question. It's usually a question about Asperger's in the workplace or things of that nature. And I asked the question last week. Last week's poll was to employers, asking employers how much training you do for your managers so that they can manage people with Asperger syndrome. And I was stunned at the result. Now, I only had 11 responses, so it can't be taken as being completely representative of all employing situations. So, but of the 11 responses I got back, more than half, it was 55%, said they do no training whatsoever for managers of people, of their staff, of their employees who have Asperger syndrome. So that's alarming. If that is a representative sample, which I know 11 is not, but if that's even reasonably close to what the numbers are across the board, that's an alarming statistic, that more than half of the employers don't train their managers in how to manage people with Asperger syndrome. It then begs the next question: what do they look out for? Are the managers trained to look out for triggers and behaviors that could be indicative of someone not being comfortable at their workplace, or they might be about to have a meltdown or get overwhelmed? Because if you can't accommodate all these adjustments and make their working life productive in a productive way, so that they can be productive and calm and work effectively at work, you're going to have one of several things happen. One, the employee is going to leave and potentially hit you with a claim under the Equality Act of 2010, or go to a lawyer, an employment lawyer, and say they made it impossible for me to work there because they didn't take count of my traits and things that they could do that could help me work. Or they go on the long-term sick. Now, that doesn't serve anyone. If they leave and don't make a claim, you've got to find someone, you've got to advertise for someone, you've got to interview people. That all takes time. It takes managers time, it takes HR time, and it costs money. It costs a lot of money to hire someone. If the person then does make a claim, you've got all the hassle and the information gathering and all the legalities that go with that, which could drag on for 6 months or a year. Or if they're off sick, are they going to be off sick for a day? Are they going to be off sick for a week? Are they going to suddenly you're going to get a doctor's line in that signed them off for 3 months because they can't cope with the work environment that they have? And suddenly you're left with, how do we fill this 3 months or 6 months? What do we do? Do we get someone in temporarily? Do we try and spread the workload around the other people in the office or in the business? How do you deal with that? It creates a problem. All of these things happen because potentially you're not catering for and making reasonable adjustments so that people on the spectrum who are neurodivergent can work effectively and efficiently and productively in your business. And those are things that you need to avoid. So having a safe space is one of the techniques, is one of the strategies that can really help people who can get overwhelmed at work, which can then lead to an issue. I've seen someone who may or may not have had Asperger's, who certainly had mental health issues, let's call it that. I've seen them blow up at an office junior who did nothing wrong, really. Just the person was at the end of their tether and they blew up at an office junior, and it wasn't pleasant. It was not a pleasant sight to see. It certainly wasn't pleasant for the office junior, who ran out the department crying. So you've immediately got an issue there, is how to deal with that person, how to calm them down, find out what's wrong, and how do you help the person who with mental issues blew up about that person? Because obviously that is a reflection of them having an issue, and it may be that those were all external factors, or maybe their boss has given them too much to do, or they've got too many deadlines, or someone's made a change somewhere and they can't cope with it, and they've just blown up at the next person who walked in, who happened to be someone completely innocent of the situation, and they've got a right bad mouthful and a dressing down in the workplace, which was totally unjustified. So you've got two people to deal with there, and you've then got to think about the wider issue of how is the business putting stress on too many employees, and that can mean they're understaffed because they're overworking their people. And yes, there are times when you need to work that little bit extra, that little bit longer to get something out. Those things happen. But when that becomes the norm, and that norm becomes longer and longer hours by more and more people, you have a staffing issue, you have a delegation issue, you have a management issue that needs to think about getting more staff in, getting more staff to do the work. How about having more supervisors or managers in to take the workload off one particular section? And all of these things can add up to a situation where the person can get overwhelmed. So having a safe space, having reasonable adjustments are things that can help the employees be good at what they do, which is the work that they're doing, rather than being off sick, threatening the company with legal action because they can't work there, because they're not making it comfortable for them to work there. And all of these things are stress factors on the business, on the department, on the teams that you're working with, and they are things that need to be avoided if at all possible. Have a quick slide. So I was going to ask if anyone's had a situation, or what they do if they feel as though they're getting overwhelmed, and how they cope with those sorts of situations.
I think you're right in that it's a large proportion, a lot of it can be helped through good management of your team, providing the right environment in the beginning, providing a good organization for your staff, and for jobs or events that they have to attend. I remember one time when I sort of felt very overwhelmed and blew up at some visitors who they came from the Ministry of Agriculture, and I was told that I was going to have two visitors who were going to look at subjects 1, 2, and 3, or whatever those subjects were. And I came out of my office, and there was about 10 people there.
No.
Of which were probably the people who were doing the work, and the rest who were just coming along for the outing from their office. And I firstly wasn't introduced to who was who. Secondly, they handed me a letter that they wanted me to read and sign straight away, which it just seemed. And then things, you can imagine that sort of atmosphere, and you just feel overwhelmed. And I started having a real go at every one of them. I didn't care who they were, how high they were in the Ministry of Agriculture, but the rest of the visit didn't go very well. So
yeah. But you would have felt as though you've been ambushed.
Yes, exactly. But you have this sort of feeling in your mind that things are just getting, you're almost detached from reality, and things that you just can't process everything that's going on. So it's even so. Therefore, the conclusion is, if your team is well managed and events are well managed and everyone understands exactly what's going on, which can take more work to do. I know some managers will find it difficult to provide that sort of organization, but it can help a lot. I get accused of being quite tiresome when I'm organizing things, saying you don't need so much detail. You're mad about the detail, but For me, unless every little bit is organized, for me, it's not organized. So
Yeah.
I suppose
Yeah.
different people do different things different ways, but it's worth noting, you know, if you have people who have certain needs or whatever, to try to understand those needs and allow for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And when I do quite a bit of research online about employment situations and things like that. And one of the things that I've learned from doing that, but also from when I was working as a geologist, is that people don't leave. They don't when people leave a business, leave a job, they tend to leave not because they don't like the job. They tend to leave because they can't get on with their boss. It's usually their supervisor or their manager that is the problem for them, rather than they hate the job. Now, there are circumstances when you're not in the right fit of a job, but most people tend to leave because they can't cope with the way that they are being managed by their supervisor or their manager, because it just doesn't work for them. And that's a breakdown in communication, and that's having a manager who's not able to or willing to adjust to get the best out of you. Because yes, managers have all sorts of things they need to do. They'll have all sorts of KPIs and targets and deliverables to address. But fundamentally, a manager's job is to find the best ways to support every one of their team so that they can work as effectively and efficiently as possible. That surely is the job of the management, rather than being a bean counter and checklisting everyone that they've come in on time and they're not 2 minutes late and they're not getting pulled up for this, that, and the other. Those kind of micromanaging ways of doing things are just so negative that it's no wonder people leave. So that was really all I wanted to say about the safe space, unless anyone else wanted to comment or ask me any questions about it. And while you may be thinking about that, if you are an employer and you want to know more about the 7 Steps program that I have on ways to manage people with Asperger's at work, then please feel free to get in touch with me either on my website, which is aspergersmatters.com, or you can email me at andrew@aspergersmatters.com, and I'd be delighted to have a free consultation with you to see how I can help you, and whether there's a fit. Or if you've got any other questions about Asperger's syndrome as an individual, or how Asperger's syndrome can be managed better in the workplace, then please feel free to get in touch, and I would welcome the opportunity to talk to you. But if that's all we've got for today, then I'm going to close off the recording and say thank you.